This is a queen ant of the red fire ant species.
That in tight of mucher seat and fracture.
In the next day, she will dedicate all her energy to building a giant ant empire. However, a colony of monomorium ants is silently observing her every move. If discovered, they will immediately launch an attack, destroying the nest. They will steal everything and turn the red fire ant's dream into ashes. At this moment, all hope rests on this tiny but resilient creature. In the first few days, the queen ant used her survival instincts and strong will. She dug a small nest underground, where the first eggs were silently incubated. But the ground above was not peaceful, as monomorium ants were actively searching. They were like greedy robbers, always lurking in silence. For the red fire ant queen, it was a danger that could strike at any moment. Her arduous journey had just begun. Understanding nest safety was paramount. The queen ant never left her shelter, dedicating all her strength to giving birth. The first generation of worker ants, these loyal warriors, immediately got to work. They hastily built walls, sealing off the nest entrance, perhaps sensing the outside threat. In this fierce battle for survival, to endure, the red fire ants must build a powerful army. And to feed the army, there must be enough provisions. The worker ants began to spread out across the ground, searching for food. Whenever they found food, they immediately worked together to drag it back to the nest. Then, the food would be crushed and processed into white mushroom-like bundles. This was an excellent source of nutrition for the growing larvae. Time passed quietly, and in a blink, 140 days had gone by. Thanks to the abundant food source, the red fire and populations soared. The ant nest became crowded and full of vitality. However, the newly hatched soldier ants were still weak and moved slowly. They desperately needed energy, and honey, an abundant nutrient source, was the ideal choice. A small dish of honey lay not far from the nest, silent for many days. But the red fire ants were unaware until a monomorium ant discovered the treasure. Immediately, a swarm of monomorium ants arrived, and the balance was broken. The first conflict between the red fire ants and monomorium ants erupted. Compared to the bloody battles that would follow, this was not yet a real war. But for the red fire ants, the losses were still significant. What moved me was that ants are among the rare animals that respect their fallen comrades. The surviving red fire ants silently gathered their comrades' bodies, building a small tomb. That act was truly warm and ritualistic, amidst a harsh natural world. The first battle ended like that. After the first battle, the red fire ant kingdom became weaker than ever. But honey remained an essential nutrient, a precious food they needed to sustain the colony. After the painful lesson from last time, this time the red fire ant colony was extremely cautious. They slowly approached the honey dish, then began to enjoy it. If you look closely, you can clearly see the small, delicate movements, as if each ant was cherishing every rare drop of honey. What's even more surprising is that they showed an intelligence beyond imagination. One day, 100 tiny but agile and annoying phorid flies, like my wife's daily nagging. They suddenly swarmed into the red fire ant's territory. Immediately, the red fire ants discovered the intruders, activating alert mode. They organized a counterattack, and most of the phorid flies were captured. But a few managed to escape, only to leap from the tiger's mouth into the wolf's den. They had just left the red fire ant territory, only to step into the monomorium ant's control zone. My pets clearly didn't like these uninvited guests, always appearing annoyed. On the red fire ant's side, their growth was not as smooth as I thought. It wasn't until the second year that the red fire ant army I had been following truly became a mighty empire. But then, at that very moment, the monomorium ants, with their overwhelming numbers and momentum, they launched a surprise total attack, swarming deep inside the nest. The red fire ants reacted extremely quickly, immediately counterattacking fiercely. The enemy's ambition was not just to occupy the nest, but to destroy it. A courageous soldier ant volunteered to stay at the nest entrance, holding off the enemy. The enemy shifted targets to the larvae, and each weak young one fell before the fierce attack. The monomorium ant colony was finally repelled, retreating from the red fire ant nest. The red fire ants achieved final victory. From that day on, the monomorium colony never returned.